So we are here for the Solid Waste Committee meeting. We are streaming on YouTube, and the meeting is starting now. We have in attendance Councilmember Greg Bogue, Solid Waste Committee member, City Manager Ray Casey, Assistant City Manager Jennifer Crawford, I'm sorry, by video phone, and Richard Nino from Burtec. Richard, why don't you get us started?
Good morning, Ray, and thank you very much for your time. On the agenda, one of the first items is an industry update as it relates to COVID-19. Obviously, these are unprecedented times, certainly in the solid waste industry, just as it is for the general life-to-life of people in the country and the world. But locally in Southern California, there have been some sizable industry impacts. Fortunately, Burtec has been able to navigate through those, but I can give you a brief update as to what's happening in Southern California. There are numerous MRF processing facilities throughout the LA region and beyond, where certain companies are no longer processing recyclables. There are also some impacts in the green waste and compost operations in the region. Some cities and municipalities have opted to eliminate bulky item collection programs as well as household hazardous waste collection programs. We've been able to navigate through that and maintain full operations at our facilities to include recyclables processing, green waste processing, and inclusion and continuance of the bulky item projects, and supporting regional HHW events if they are in fact taking place. So while there have been industry impacts in the region, we've been able to maintain our full complement of services. And we're real proud of that because there's not a whole lot of companies that are doing that. Those efforts and initiatives will help continue the solid waste diversion and recycling programs that are mandated by the state. We have reached out to the state, as has numerous municipalities and staff from various cities, to contact CalRecycle and ask what relief, if any, they will be offering for compliance programming in light of the fact that we're dealing with this pandemic. To date, they've been slow to respond. In fact, we've not had any firm commitments from them other than they are evaluating the situation. And we hope to hear from them within the next month or so with options of program relief, potential program suspension, and not having to fully implement and roll out the next component of the city's compliance program, which is more extensive food waste recycling programming. It's ironic, and what we've communicated to the state is that many of these businesses that are obligated under the various statutes to implement programs, a lot of them not open right now. They're temporarily shut down, as we all know. Therefore, it seems to us anyway to be a logical step in suspending or offering some temporary relief to the cities because of that. Hopefully we'll get good feedback and positive support from CalRecycle in that regard.
Richard, before you go on, I'd just like to say for the record, we did not receive any public comment via email this morning by the 8 o'clock deadline. So just for the record.
Are there any questions on the industry update as it relates to COVID-19 impacts?
I don't have any.
Okay, not hearing any, I will go on to the next item, which is the Yucaipa Disposal Annual Report. Every year, we do put together a very extensive report, which includes program summaries, tonnage reports, franchise fee remittances, and information related to the various programs. There's a lot of information, but I'd like to just highlight a few of the items that are worth noting. On page 3, we have a summary table of both mandatory commercial recycling programs and organics programs as it relates to food waste. Table 3 shows that we've had a relatively steady number of customers participating in mandatory commercial recycling. Yucaipa is 100% compliant with mandatory commercial recycling requirements, so the city is in good standing in that regard. Table 4 illustrates the number of food waste recycling customers that we have here in the city. As of December of 2019, we had a total of 37 food waste customers. The big push will be in the next requirement or threshold impact, where we are hoping that CalRecycle will offer some relief and some temporary suspension of those ongoing food waste recycling efforts. As I mentioned earlier, food waste production or organics generation on the commercial sector is down considerably for obvious reasons. Moving on to page 5, there's a summary table as it relates to the residential recycling revenue and cost impacts. Recycling revenues and cost impacts continue to be realized. This is what I would characterize as the second largest impact in the rates that we will see later in the presentation. In summary, for all of 2019, the net cost of providing the recycling services for processing and residue disposal resulted in a net cost of $361,000 amongst the residential rate base. Table 10 illustrates
Richard,
yes, sir.
Can you repeat that last quote or that last bit of information?
Yes, sir. That the annual net cost to the residential sector is for the recycling program is $361,000, and that is we'll see what the cost impacts are of that in the rate review.
And perhaps it'd be helpful, illustrative, to share those net costs for the last 2 years as well.
In 2018, the net cost was $197,000. And you'll see the dramatic impact when we look at the 2017 number. Keep in mind that in 2017, that was before the global recycling market collapse. So the net cost in 2017 was $30,000, whereas in 2019, it's now over 10 times that at $361,000. That's illustrative of the reasons why the recycle plants that shut down last year was directly related to that. They were no longer able to sustain their operating model and recover their costs, and that's why so many shut down.
And that, again, that's because China basically is not taking recycling anymore from
Correct.
California or anyplace else.
Correct. Country. And we've actually seen some of the secondary markets in the Far East, like Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, South Korea. They are now talking about imposing their own restrictions on recycling. Similar to what China implemented in 2018, hopefully not to that degree, because we are heavily reliant still on these foreign markets. So hopefully they will continue to accept our material without the stringent requirements that China implemented overnight, it seems.
Are there any plans at the California level, at the state level, to try to, take up some of the slack that, they're demanding all these recycle programs, but then they don't permit the processing? Have they rethought that process at this point?
Yeah, Mr. Bogie, bring up an excellent point. And in fact, the state received a lot of criticism for not establishing programs and infrastructure that is self-sustaining. Criticized to the extent that we've been relying on China for well over 15 years to be the outlet for California's recycling material. With that, the state has looked at and evaluated what they can do to promote domestic demand and domestic infrastructure for some of these recycling commodities. There are some seed monies that are being offered through various grants to promote that infrastructure, but it will require sizable investment to provide domestic outlets. There have been rumors that there are some companies looking to open up operations out of state in nearby Arizona or Nevada that aren't as heavily regulated as California, in an effort to help with the supply demand that the Western United States is faced with. So hopefully there will be some domestic remedy for that. Unfortunately, with that comes further increased costs. You know, we all hear that the labor cost in China is significantly less than what it is here in California, certainly. So if and when those dynamics change, where the secondary Pacific Rim countries are no longer receiving material and it's being handled domestically, I would expect that those costs would increase as well. So it cuts both ways, unfortunately.
So Richard, I know you've heard that question a few times, just because I've asked it for the last couple of years. Is it any further along than it was? Because we've been talking about it for a while, and they've been trying to come up with a solution.
Yeah,
California have in this last year, have they actually moved any further down the road and trying to get these opportunities going?
There have been some small success stories in that regard, but it's going to take a lot of those to make an impact on domestic outlets. So it is slow. There's not a line of companies waiting to get permits to open up recycling processing centers in California. And the high cost and extreme regulations in the state are part of the problem. So I would characterize the state's efforts as marginal, but there's not a whole lot of takers out there either, simply because of the difficulties and challenges in that arena.
Okay.
Moving on to Table 10, that is a residential contamination trend or residue that is found in the recycling containers. In 2018, the contamination percentage stood at 22%, and in 2019, that contamination crept up to 29%. That type of increase is not unlike that we have seen amongst other communities, certainly in Southern California. And the reason for that is twofold. One, in an effort to sustain the secondary market outlets for these recyclable commodities, we are trying to do what we can to clean the material better. With that, we do recover more trash, which drives up the contamination numbers. And secondly, there are a few types of plastics that there simply is no outlet or market for that. The best example I can give you for why that is petroleum is one of the resources to make plastics. As we know, even recently, petroleum prices are down. So these plastic manufacturers find it more economical to make plastic products from virgin materials rather than recycling those certain types of plastics. That is not the case for all plastics, but only certain types, like margarine tubs, butter containers, some food product containers, as well as plastics like some of the toys or hard, rigid plastics, or even laundry baskets. So it's those different types of plastics that are very difficult, if at all possible, to market. Any questions on that? Okay.
I don't mean to be the only guy speaking here, but do you think perhaps when we tell everyone that the recycling market is going away, people are starting not to care as much about contamination? Is there any truth to that?
I don't think there's any correlation to that, because we've not promoted that messaging to customers. What we have promoted is reinforcing the messages of keeping recyclables clean and the challenges in marketing those commodities. We've hesitated to change or remove any of those plastics from acceptable materials because, number one, it's not a high volume of that waste stream, and secondly, the outlets or markets could change from one month to the next. As it is, it's taken years for people to develop good recycling habits, and as we all know, change is a difficult process, no matter what the item is or what the issue is. So we've been hesitant to send that messaging out so that it would not impact recyclable participation levels.
Well, the other issue too is that the state is not releasing us from our required diversion number. We're still mandated, right?
That is correct. Any other questions, Mr. Bogue?
No, that's it.
Moving on to page 9, table 20. You may recall that through the negotiations that Yucaipa Disposal and the city of Yucaipa went through, there were a couple new programs that were introduced to the city. One of them was increased frequencies of street sweeping, where that cost would be incurred by Yucaipa Disposal. Starting July of 2019, all residential streets were swept one time a month, and certain collector streets and arterial streets were swept now 2 times per month. Since July of 19 through December, the street sweeping efforts, which average approximately 489 curb miles per month, resulted in a total of almost 300 tons of street sweeping debris that was collected off of the city streets and either recycled or deposited at the landfill. In addition to that, one of the new programs that started in October of 19 was the Sharps collection program, a program that we built and delivered and placed a drop-off container outside of the Yucaipa Police Department. And since that time, we've collected 0.11 tons of Sharps materials. I will say that of all of the Sharps programs that Burtech and Yucaipa Disposal are involved with, this is the program that we've seen is most utilized by any community. Surprisingly so. So there is a lot of residents are really taking advantage of that program, which is a good thing. That's what it's there for. Table 22, that is the table showing the city's compliance with the state requirements. The most recent data is a 2018 assessment by the state based on the trash, recycling, and overall solid waste programs that have been implemented by the city. I'm pleased to report that the city is currently in good standing with the reporting of recycling and diversion programs and tonnages. So we want to certainly thank the city for having the vision to implement the programs, and more importantly, the residents and the businesses to participate in the programs effectively to have that kind of result. With that this conclude my comments on the annual report, and I'll open it up to any questions that you might have on the report.
I don't have any questions, but I'm surprised that it's, did you say 300 tons extra come off the streets from just the extra street sweeping?
Yes, sir. And that's in about 6 months' time. So if you were to annualize, it could be about 600 tons per year. Is that
what kind of debris is that? Is that, we go do slurry seal and sometimes that runs off. Is it picking that up and is that the weight? Or is it actual trash?
It's an accumulation of everything. If you look at the material type that's collected from the street sweeping debris, it's everything from cigarette butts to bottle caps to small pieces of litter, leaves, rock and sand debris, if you will. That's essentially what it is.
I would suggest in terms of quantity, a lot of it is, especially in the winter months, runoff from debris from private properties that perhaps aren't containing some of that sediment on site, so it runs off into the street. In terms of quantities, especially in the winter months.
And that likely is the heaviest component of the weight as well.
Right. Well, the streets definitely look better.
That is true.
Any other questions or comments on the annual report?
I don't. Am I the only council member here at this point?
You are, yes.
Okay. Is Bob the other?
Yes.
Isn't Bob the other? Okay.
The next item on today's agenda is the residential and commercial rate proposal. We generally begin this segment of the meeting by reviewing the current rates, the drivers or the impacts to changes in rates, what those impacts result in from a monetary standpoint, and then the options that are being presented to the city in selecting the appropriate program model, which offers subsidies to both the 15-gallon service customer and the 30-gallon service customer. Excuse me for just a minute while I'm getting my glasses here. Okay, so there are essentially a couple, 3 or 4 cost factors impacting the rates. One is CPI, or a consumer price index adjustment. That factor is used to adjust the service or hauling fees that Yucaipa Disposal incurs. Those monies are used to pay for all the labor, driver, truck, insurances, support staff, including administration, maintenance, and the actual logistics of picking up and delivering the city's solid waste and recyclable materials. That number, the CPI number, came in at 3.07%. And in this contract, the adjustment limits the hauler to 90% of that CPI adjustment, which in this case is 2.76%. So in this year's proposed rates, the adjustment for Yucaipa Disposal for its revenue that it retains for the 60-gallon customer, that increase is 46 cents a month. So Yucaipa Disposal will get, under this year's proposal, 46 cents per month increase. The other cost factors are related to, or cost increases are related to a small increase in green waste processing fees. A decrease in green waste processing fees from $2.53 a month to $2.50 per month. A slight reduction of 20 cents in the refuse component. For a 60-gallon customer, that number is $3.50 per month, which is 20 cents less than the current rate. And recycling is the most impactful reason for the adjustment, and that is increasing from $1.05 per month to $2.02 a month, which is 97 cents. Adding up all of the proposed rate adjustments, again, those disposal and processing costs are monies that we collect from our customers and remit to the landfills or the processing entities for the various commodities. With the proposed rates, there are a series of options that include different subsidy amounts for the 15 and 30 gallon customers, with the 60 gallon customers being adjusted accordingly based on whatever the subsidy amounts might be. In its absolute increase amount under certain options, if we were to look at just 1% increase, this increase represents approximately 9.2% over the current rate. And it's generally at this time of the meeting where we present the options and the various impacts of those options for committee review and city staff comment as appropriate.
I don't have the rates in front of me. Is there any way that you could take a picture and text
Yeah,
the page over to me?
we'll send it to you right now.
Okay. You can do it at text or call it easy.
Just that page.
Jennifer, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was unmuting.
Yeah. Do you if you have it in front of you, you could just take a
Yeah.
picture of it and send it over.
Let
Text
me
it to me.
do
I
that.
think Tammy should have it to you any second. But
Yeah.
you might get there first, Jen.
Sorry about all my notes on it. Did you get it?
Am I the only one that's remote?
No, I'm
No,
video.
Oh, you are too.
Yep.
I haven't received it yet. Tammy's sending it over in an email.
Yes.
Your number's, I don't want to say your number out loud. Is the last four digits 0126?
No.
Oh. You're not going to get it.
That's why I'm not gonna get it. I'll well, if it's any for your information, I think every year I have picked one of the options. It's usually one of three options, correct? I usually have gone with the one that doesn't increase the subsidy, and if anything, it just slowly changes it back to non-subsidy.
That is correct, and to that aim, there are a couple options that do provide that opportunity in reducing the subsidies. That's option 2, option 3 with a variance, then option 4 where there's in fact 0 subsidies for the 30-gallon container.
There we go. It's popped up now. So you said it was, what did you say? Option 2 was the one?
Option 2, 3, and 4 are offer those opportunities.
As Richard mentioned, option 4 completely eliminates the subsidy for the 30-gallon and applies subsidy only from the 60-gallon to the 15-gallon.
In that option, for example, what it does do is keep the 60-gallon barrel rate under the $30 mark and minimizes the increase to the 15-gallon by keeping that under $2 per month increase as well.
In option, what did you say? Option 4? You said?
Option 4, yes.
All right, so which one are you guys recommending at this point? All of them? And I'm supposed to pick?
Well, option 1 does push the cost for the 60-gallon up over $30, but it has a lower impact on the 15-gallon. Still have subsidies on all, affecting all 3. Option 4 eliminates the subsidy for the 30-gallon, applies the subsidy to the 15-gallon only with the cost to the 60-gallon, but keeps the cost for the 60-gallon under $30.
All right, I'm just trying to process the numbers here. So option 4, you said eliminates the subsidy to which one again?
The 30-gallon.
The 30?
So that is just a straight rate increase or rate cost without a subsidy with option 4.
And option 2 is reducing subsidies to 15 and 30. And it keeps the 60-gallon under 30.
15-gallon goes up just a little more than it does with option 4.
If I'm going to be pushing, I think I'd lean towards option 2. Unless you guys can tell me what. It's all going up, so it's all.
Yeah, it's all going up.
You know, people are not going to be happy regardless.
Nope, understand. I think option 2 is a good option.
Okay, that's where I'm at. Unless there's concerns with that decision.
That is the committee recommendation, is what I'm hearing. I think it is a reasonable solution.
Does that work? Is
Yes.
Richard, are you still there?
Yes, that is certainly a viable option for this year's rate adjustment.
Okay.
We'll make note of the recommendation.
Okay. I know that some of the stuff are still, I'm still here where people are so concerned about what we did in the last year or so.
In terms of tax roll billing?
In terms of tax roll billing, yes. And so whatever we can do, if there's any other ways to try to get that down, I know we're in a tough situation, but whatever you can do. What this is it.
What we can do is make people aware with more time and anticipation of the option to prepay and avoid tax roll billing. However, what's interesting is that with tax roll billing, it does offer residents a deferred payment, if you will, where, especially in these times, there are some folks that are out of work, not working. So instead of in a traditional billing time frame, we would have, under the old program, we would have been billing every 2 months. With the tax roll billing, the first payment would not be required until December. So indirectly, it does, and it could help with some of that deferred payment for some of the residential customer base. But again, we'll launch the outreach effort about the prepaid program as it was developed last year in response to the city request that we provide another option to the tax roll billing, and that is the one that we came up with last year.
Okay. I've heard a few complaints. Most of the complaints have come from a few of the property management companies, and just the process and the way they've had to, people who have, thousands of these property management groups. They're the ones that are complaining. I did hear a complaint from a business owner. Actually, his business is outside of this. He lives in Yucaipa, but his business is in San Bernardino.
This doesn't apply to commercial accounts, though, right, Richard? It's only residential.
That is correct.
Right. Well, what I was saying, he resides in Yucaipa, and his business is in another city. And I happened to go to his business, and he voiced his complaint to me. Anyway.
About his residential bill. Yeah.
About the residential bill, yeah. After I sat down and explained it to him a little bit, he actually did understand. It's hard to collect on something. There's no other way. There's no other way to collect. So he kind of understood. But
well, I think Richard's
people out there are still concerned. I'm just letting you know, and so anything we can do to keep the cost down.
Richard's approach to promoting the prepayment option, I think, is a good suggestion as well. So we'll get that information out there.
Okay. I don't have anything else. Is that so? Option 2.
Option 2 is we'll take that recommendation. We'll put it out in the posting in the newspaper and take that to council.
Okay.
So just in terms of timing, we'll work on the Prop 218 notice that will go out the 1st of May. And then we will do the public hearing before City Council on June 22nd.
On June 22nd? Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
All right. I think that anything else, Richard, that you
just the last item on there is the legislation update.
Oh, thank you.
As it impacts the solid waste industry. And I alluded to that earlier in the meeting where we're waiting to hear what CalRecycle is going to do to offer relief to the state and jurisdictions in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Hopefully they'll offer some relief, and that would be very timely because SB 1383, which is the most impactful